Welcome to a Second Chance at Life podcast. I'm your host, Arvilla Beckworth, and welcome to another episode. This week, I have an episode that's regarding codependency and people pleasing. And before I get started on the topic, let me bring on my guest. Hey, Taneshia, how are you today?
Hi, how are you? So excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for coming on and joining me, and we'll get right on into it. Would you mind telling my audience who you are and what you do?
Yes, so my name is Taneshia Johnson, aka TJ Self-Care. I am a associate clinical social worker, first-time author of the book entitled When Depression and Anxiety Have a Voice, and I'm also a self-care coach.
Awesome. And I've been watching you on social media, so I can attest to you knowing a
Yay.
lot about people pleasing and self care. And one of the questions I had as women, we desire to make people happy all the time, whether it's our significant other, kids, bosses, parents, whomever. We usually go out of our way to meet their needs first before meeting our own. And usually we're pretty generous with our time. Even if we physically can't give, we still give. I've heard some people saying sometimes the things that we do is being too nice. Do you think it's someone being, like I said, too nice, or someone that's being a people pleaser?
I think it can depend. A lot of times when the two they connect so often that sometimes it's hard to decipher. But the biggest way that we can decipher whether or not we're being too nice or if we're people pleasers is if we feel guilty when we're not supporting, people.
Mm,
If we feel levels of like shame and guilt, then that's leaning more towards being a people pleaser. Because generally, all of us struggle with boundaries,
yes.
sometimes. But with people who struggle with people pleasing, it weighs more heavier on us. And it's like this obligation we feel to help people. And we start going in depth about how this person will struggle, or if we've already watched this person struggle, we'll start to reminisce on stories they've told us, and we'll allow those things to pull our strings to the point where we completely forget things that we may need to have done for ourselves, and this person or these people become the obligation.
Now that we've kind of got a basic difference between the two, what are the signs of people pleasing? Something that maybe that we can either identify in ourselves or someone else.
So that's a great question. I'm so happy you asked me. So signs of people pleasing is feeling like you have to support people. You don't, it's not an option to say yes, no. Feeling like you have to always kind of know like the whereabouts of somebody and things that are going on in their life in order for you to support them. Feeling like you don't have your own level of love, self knowledge about things that you like, who you are, struggling with your identity, wondering if people will support you if you're not supporting them. All those things are signs of people pleasing and codependency.
And I want to talk about that. I know offline we talked about this, but the difference between codependency and people pleasing. Would you mind breaking that down as well?
Yeah, so with the codependency is really a cluster of behavior patterns that someone has in order to survive a challenging childhood experience. So, generally, people who struggle with codependency have parents that struggle with alcohol addiction, drug abuse, severe mental health issues, or just was a parent that was emotionally unable to support themselves and their child. And so, with that background, in order to survive, a person will learn to prioritize their parents' needs, and do whatever they ask them to do in order to somehow bond and connect with this parent to get their needs met. And if that's not unlearned, then when we become adults, now we've learned that in order to get our needs met, we have to first meet the needs of those in our life. So people pleasing becomes one of those mechanisms that we use in order to connect with people and be in relationships with people.
Mm. Something new that I learned, because before talking to you, I thought people pleasing alone was the biggest thing, the overall umbrella, but it looks like codependency
It
starts
is.
from there. And I never thought about it being related to parent, as a child. Because I guess I thought codependency was anyone besides yourself that you were depending on. But that makes a little bit more sense, because I've had friends who, like you said, had parents that were alcoholics or had some other issues going on, that that's who they depended on. And and they've, no matter what their parents were going through, they fought tooth and nail. Even when their parents wouldn't fight for themselves, you've seen the children fight more for the parents to get better and give them third, fourth, and fifth chances. But then it seemed like it always hurted them in the long run when they didn't see their parents get better at what was going on. So
Yeah, it could
that
be
has.
a really challenging, life experience, and for a lot of us, because with the codependency, there has to be someone or a group of people that are dependent upon us, and so
Mhm.
that's what fuels it, to continue.
Mm. And being a recovering codependent, why is people pleasing toxic? Because I know you have a lot of experience from that. How is that toxic for people?
With people pleasing, it really it puts you in a mindset of feeling like who you are is not enough. And that's one of the reasons why it can be really toxic, because we're constantly seeking out people that we can support, that we can take care of, as a way for us to feel good about ourselves.
Hmm.
And so it's dangerous, because we are always left with this feeling of, I'm not getting my own needs met, and we find ourselves in friendships and intimate relationships, the relationships we have, like with our family members and even like colleagues at work. We're always the go-to person,
Hmm.
that people are thinking, knows everything and has all the resources. And we've kind of been conditioned to be that person for so long that you easily lose yourself,
Hmm.
and people pleasing. You don't know who you are. Um, and that's oftentimes a lot of the things that happens when people come to me and they start healing from it, because the biggest thing you have to do is strip away, you
Right,
know, that mask that you've put on for so long.
right, right.
And it can be hard, because that's how we define ourselves.
And mentally, if people pleasing or codependency is not checked, what can that lead to if someone doesn't get that straightened out?
If people don't take time to really heal from people pleasing and codependency, what they'll find is they lack self worth, and they'll struggle in their relationships trying to get their needs met, and it really creates this world. Of us feeling like we are the strong person and
Mhm.
everyone around us is not. And on the back end of that, what surfaces later is depression,
Mm.
because when we don't express our feelings of disappointment and sadness, it doesn't go anywhere.
Right, right.
That energy stays in our body, and for long periods of time, it builds up. Anger turns into depression, eventually. Um, but I always tell people that when they feel depressed,
Mhm.
and you actually can see how it manifests in your life, with your appearance or with the way that you interact with people, that's actually a good sign, because it means that those walls are breaking down, you know,
Mm.
and you're really starting to see the reality of your life.
Right. And what advice could you give to mothers? I have a few mothers on here, mostly single moms. But
Oh,
what if
cheers
you're
to
the
the single
you said,
moms.
yeah.
Keep shining.
But what if the parent, the mother, she's, like I said, dealing with some issues, whether it's mental issues or maybe it's alcoholism or other things, and her child is now being codependent. What can that parent do or recognize in themselves before taking that child down that path? I guess, what tools
Mhm.
can a parent do when you start to recognize, there's some things that I'm doing that is looking like my child is, Mama, you okay? Mama, you need me to do something?
Yeah.
What can we, you know what I'm saying? What can we do to make sure we're not taking our child down that path?
Really making sure that our children stay in a child's place. You
Okay.
know, that's number one. It's like when we see our children being overly concerned or worried about us, reverting that energy, away is the best strategy we can have. Saying things like, "Oh, mommy's okay. I
Mhm.
want you to draw me a picture," or if your child is older, have you taken time today to play your video games? Play your video games and tell me how it went. You
Right.
know, because that gives them a space to still be a kid, and then it also gives us a space to get ourselves together so that when we do reconnect, we won't be as, our emotions won't be so on our face for them to
Right.
be visible for them to see.
Right. And that's great advice because I've seen in the past that, sometimes when you're a struggling parent, sometimes those mechanisms that we think that are good are really not even good for us or our child. So when
No.
we don't recognize it in ourselves, our kids see that and they do things to overcompensate, do things that they probably wouldn't normally do just to make sure you're okay. And I was just trying to figure out, how we can help our moms because sometimes, like I said, as women, we're so focused on taking care of everybody else but ourselves. So we neglect that past trauma that we haven't healed from, or we maybe neglect what we're going through right now that sometimes our children suffer and we don't even know they're suffering in silence because
Right.
we can't recognize it. So um thank you for that information that you provided. It's just that sometimes it's hard because me being an ex-single mom, it seemed like I just carried so much on my shoulder. But the one thing I always remember my daughter saying, "Mama, you okay?" And I never knew how she seen it. When I tried to hide it, I can tell she felt it. "Mommy, you okay? You want me to get this? You want me to get that?" And some of the things she wanted to get was some of those bad coping mechanisms. So I was like,
Mhm.
"Ooh, okay, wait a minute," because she knew that's what self-medicated mama at that time. You know
That's
what I
it.
mean? So that's the thing that, when I started to realize that, I was like,
Yeah. And I
mm,
thank you for sharing. I love that you shared that too, Arvilla, because it is a real thing that happens. And one thing, I don't have children, yet, but I've worked with kids, for almost
mm,
20 years. And one thing I try to really push to the single moms that I work with in my 9 to 5 is it's okay to have these vulnerable conversations with children, especially
yes,
in our African American cultures. Like we've
yes,
kind of been trained to like don't tell the kids stuff.
mhm,
But then it's like they see it and they make up their own stories in their mind. About what's going on. And so when they hear it from us, it can make it a lot easier. I shared with one of my clients a few days ago, that her child was 12. Like, it's okay to tell her that, your dad is not here and me and you have to work together as a team to get
mm,
things done for you. You know, I
right,
love you. I need you to tell me what's going on. We need to have our moments when we talk. These are the chores that I need you to do while in the house. It's like let the child know that yes, it is just the two of us or the three of us or the four of us.
mhm,
So we do have to make it work for us, but at the same time continue to reinforce to them that these are the things you do and that's it. After
mm,
that, then I want you to have fun. I want you to go out with your friends. Make it plain to the child that okay, these are responsibilities that I have because of because of our family
right,
structure, but I don't have to be this way with everybody. Just because I have to help mom a little more or I have to help my brothers and sisters a little more, I don't have to do this outside of the house. This is what
mm,
we do at home,
yeah,
and really making that plain because, a 12, 13, and definitely like a 16-year-old, they'll get it.
oh
You know,
yes,
they
very
understand,
quick,
like, oh, okay, so I don't have to always help
right,
people. I'm just doing this at home
right,
because
right,
mom needs this help at home. And
yes,
it would really make a huge difference just to know that for
yes.
them.
And I think, like you're right, especially in the Black and Brown community. I think if we're more open with our kids, with our healing, I think they're easy to receive because I think that's where some of the resentment from kids as well. They see their parents struggling, they're fighting, things that are going on, but they feel like they don't have a voice, like they're not being heard. Even though you're hurting, they're hurting as well. They're still missing things that maybe you think that you can do. Because I know I thought being a single mom, I was super mom. So I was trying to be the mom, the dad, the teacher, the doctor, everybody else, but not knowing that my child still needed that father like figure in her life. You know what I'm saying? So it was still
Right.
hard to accept the part that, yes, she still needs those things, but I wasn't listening to her because I was so hurt in my own stuff that I was, not there for my child. So it did come tough at times. And I think
Yeah.
for me, that's where I overcompensate. And I think that's why people pleasing became a big one for me because I know I was trying to, mine's not necessarily didn't come from like my parents, but I think over time, my self-esteem started my people pleasing. As I got older
Mhm.
and was still trying to learn about myself, I thought by making other people would make me happy. And in turn, I was drained. I was tired because I was doing so much for them that I couldn't,
Everybody.
no more for me.
Yeah.
I was
It's like
like,
everybody got a seat at the table except us.
yes, I'm the one that's serving everybody. I'm the one that's preparing. And then like, there's no seat for me to sit. So I
Mm-mm.
knew even then I was like, people, as we don't say people pleasing as we use other words, but that's what it is. And it's
Mhm.
so crazy that in today's society, sometimes that void that we're missing, you know, comes from a lot of things.
Yeah,
And
it
so,
does.
people pleasing, I didn't, like I said, I never really thought was something real until I kept hearing more and more about it. And then I thought about it, like looking into myself. I'm like, girl, you was been people pleasing this whole time. You know what I'm saying? So it was a reality check to me. But I'm glad that there is help out there, that we can actually go out there and actually fix some of those things that we used as coping mechanisms.
Yes, yes, me too. And I'm so happy that more people are talking about it too.
Right, right. Because it's like you said, what's done in this house stays in this house. So it's like if you don't talk about it or know that there's resources out there, how do you fix it?
Right. That's
Now,
right.
I have another question. During your time with your codependency, how long did it take? I mean, I know everyone's healing process is different, but for you, I mean, what tools did you use to kind of get you pushing forward, or what was that thing that was like, enough is enough. It's time for me to kind of start to heal myself.
Yeah, well, let me see. I'm trying to figure out how to start it because I didn't have the best entry into this. So I actually
Mm,
fell into a really deep depression and I didn't understand what was going on. On top of that, I also had just turned 30. So I think I was like at a pivotal point where I'm like, okay, I'm an official adult out here,
right.
and things are not working out for me. And I couldn't understand why. So I went to therapy because I was in grad school at the time. Anyway, and I was always referring my clients to a therapist. So I tried it for myself. And when I went there, I was thinking that I'm going there because, I don't know the trajectory of my life. And she kept asking me all these questions about my mom, my dad, my family dynamic, and all this stuff. And I didn't understand why, because I was like, I'm here because I just got dumped by a guy that I really like, and this keeps happening to me, and I don't understand why.
Mhm.
But after about 4 to 5 months, she told me that I was codependent because at the same time of going to therapy, I was also a part of a committee on my church that was starting a support group. So we had to get trained. We used a curriculum called Celebrate Recovery by Rick Warren.
Mhm, okay.
Yeah, we were getting trained in that, and so in the process of us getting trained on facilitators, we had to do the 12 steps.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is connecting to things that I'm hearing in therapy. And so I just came in session one day and I asked my therapist, I said, am I codependent? And she just nodded her head. And I was like, okay. I started going to codependency anonymous meetings, and I was still doing the meetings at my church. And yeah, it was I would say from 30 to 34, life was a roller coaster. I was
Mm.
going to meetings, I was in therapy, I was facilitating the 12 steps at my church. And
Uh-huh.
I was just anywhere I could, I was searching to figure out how do I quote unquote get rid of this so I can get better. And I didn't realize until like I was like 35 that this is embedded in me. Codependency is embedded in us because it started from early ages. From 0 to 5. Well, now they're saying 0 to 6, but 80% of the human brain grows. So
Mhm.
it's like whatever we experience, whatever we learn from those ages, those are kind of like the pinpoints now of how everything else is going to connect for us. And so because, my mom was a single parent, my dad wasn't there. Um, I had learned that I didn't have value or worth, that I'm lucky to be here. I was reminded constantly, that I wasn't supposed to be here, and I had ruined, my family, so to speak, and so I thought all those things to be true in my mind, and
Mhm.
I was living that out. And that's what happens to many of us subconsciously without realizing it. We live out the stories that were told to us. And so I was interacting with a lot of people, a lot of men that were on drugs, that were selling drugs, that were in and out of jail because I didn't know my own worth. That dream guy, you know, like, from from the Huxtables, that's
Right.
going to college. And, you know, I didn't think I could get a Dwayne Wayne, I didn't think I didn't think I could get, a Morris Chestnut. And so
Mhm.
um, I was involving myself, with men that were nothing like me. Same thing with my friends. At that time, the only thing that was important to me is that somebody, didn't call me names and treated me, fairly.
Right.
And so I ended up with a lot of friends that were nothing like me, you know. And so all of those things kind of brought me to a place of understanding more like, okay, this is not just one thing that I could go to therapy for 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 months and fix. This is like a whole way of codependency is like a whole way of living. It's a lifestyle that needs to be altered and changed, you know. Um, and so that's kind of how my journey started, with just really taking my time and understanding, okay, like I need to continue to go to therapy. I need to
Mhm.
find a coach. I need to continue to connect myself to people that are healing from this just like me, so that I can really learn, like my place in the world and my value. So, yeah, that's a long winded response,
No,
but
it's an honest response because now I can see exactly where it comes from, and even the passion behind it. Because, like you said, a lot of us, that raw area that we don't like to expose is somebody else's learning lesson.
yeah, yeah. So it's been a journey,
Mhm.
to say the least. Is you know, and that's what I try to share with people. And I actually, I when I because I wrote I just turned 39 now. When I wrote my first book, I was actually 35.
Uh-huh.
And my dad had just died, and I was contemplating whether or not I should put it out because I just didn't feel like I had the energy to market it and push it.
Mhm.
And so I had prayed and I said, Lord, if you help me get rid of whatever this is, heal from this, I will tell the world the real truth about what happened. And so that's how my business started. It started with my book, and people read the book and they were asking me like, do you do any coaching or anything? And I was like, well, I mean, I do have my master's in social work, and I've been counseling people at my job for 15 years, but I didn't know how to do it, just me.
Right, right.
um, we never know how our jobs are like buffers, because it's like the clients, they sign like service agreements and all those things, and my job schedules my clients. And so I was like, wait a minute, I don't know how to do that stuff. But I just jumped out here because I said, well, I promised God that I would help people, and I thought I was just supposed to be writing, but he wanted me to coach and speak. So I'm like, okay.
So he had a whole nother mission for you, huh?
Had a whole nother mission, yeah. And it's just been amazing to see how many people don't know about it. We think that this is just taking care of people is just life, and we have to figure out ways to cope with it.
Since you are still, I'm not sure if you're still on your journey, but do you feel more confident in, and I guess let me see what, saying no? Do you feel confident in your boundaries and coming across to people where you were 10 years ago? How has things changed for you today?
It's changed a lot. I definitely feel comfortable. It's always, sad, but one thing I'll share, for people who may still be going through those sad periods, is this what I came to realize over the last couple of years. If I say that I truly love somebody and I want the best for them, and the expectation they have of me is not going to get them what they need, then it's only fair to be okay with that person leaving my life,
Mm,
because I want them to be happy.
right.
And I also know my limitations, and I know how much I can or cannot support you. So it's like I need to accept that, okay, this relationship is ended, or this friendship is ending, or this family member that I thought was going to be really, really close, you know, things are going to transition and change, because they need more. And so
Mhm.
that's something that really gives me comfort, when I do have to set hard boundaries. And another thing I've been blessed to see, since I've been, healing from this, is people come back. People come back, and it opens up conversations, and then the relationships are stronger because now we've gone through something together. It's like
Right.
I've witnessed you having to leave to take care of yourself. You've witnessed me having to set a firm boundary. So now we can sit down and ask ourselves, okay, well, what happened in that moment? I recently had to do that, with a family member, and come to find out, she was, going through a DV situation, with
Oh,
her boyfriend. And here I am upset because I'm like, my dad died and I haven't heard from you. And so we were really able to see, okay, how can how can this be different next time? What do I need to do? I need to understand, right, that you have this conflict and situation going on,
hmm,
and it's time for me to be there for you more so than you being there for me. But then times that I don't pick up the phone, you have to understand that I'm grieving right now and I can't listen to whatever's going on. And
right.
you need to develop a support system outside of just me so that you have someone, and vice versa. So we were able to have a really good conversation, and so I just want to share that message with people, that sometimes people really do come back, and then the relationship can be even stronger. Um, when we feel good and we feel like having those conversations in the moment,
Mhm.
that's really what's best. But sometimes that can't happen, if we're upset, or this
Right.
person, isn't answering the phone or doesn't want to meet with us. Sometimes we have no choice but just to let it go. But if they do come back to us, and we cared about them in the past, we should be open to having conversations and still maintaining our boundaries, but working with that person to compromise. Like, okay, how can we, get better at this? What were some of the triggers? What were some of the signs, that popped up? Because things pop up that we don't talk about. You know,
Mhm.
the second time she didn't answer the phone when I called, I was mad then, but I let it go.
Right.
Versus versus asking, hey, I'm reaching out to you and you're not responding. Are you okay? Giving her a space to say, yes, I'm going through XYZ. Like, okay, cool. So now I know I need to lean on somebody else. So I just wanted to drop those messages for people who may be going through that because it could feel really isolated when we first start setting boundaries.
And I was going to ask you about that, the isolation period, because there's a difference, between isolating yourself and having alone time. And
Yes,
I
say
don't
that.
think a lot of people understand that. You don't want to get isolated to where you're cutting people out. It's okay to be alone and kind of recharge, within yourself, but to isolate and then go cold turkey is not good either. So,
No, I'm so happy you said that distinction too, because a lot of people, they don't get it.
mm-mm. It is something, yeah, you definitely got to pay attention to. And what I did like what you said, amongst many things, is the support system. Because I think sometimes we depend on one person for our total support, and we got to be able to have multiple people. I like to call them pillars. Pillars are things that hold things up. So I like to tell people to have multiple pillars that hold you up from different aspects. Maybe you have some in your support group, a best
Mhm.
friend, some, at work or at church, but to have one person to be your sole confidant, your sole venting person, that's heavy on one person alone. And to all, like you said, didn't answer the phone after the second time. Sis over here is doing life too. She still got stuff going on, and you depended on her. So I think I love that you said that, because I think we as women need to be more open with communities, setting up communities in entrepreneurship or single moms group within church without feeling like it's a competition or somebody's against us or vice versa. It's like now is the time to really start using the word community for what it really is, to support each other, to help each other, to acknowledge when one person is down, we're bringing that person up together without belittling or talking about, you know what I'm saying? To really have a support system, because I don't think a lot of people have that, especially growing up. If you didn't have it in your parents, it's kind of hard to develop that when you get amongst your peers, because you don't know what that looks like. What does support look like if I've never had support? So
That's
when you
right.
become an adult, that's where that isolation. I'd rather be isolated because I know I got me and da da da. When really you need a community to kind of really help you get to that next level of healing, support, and other things that go along with that. So you're spot on about just having more people to lean on.
Yeah, I love that what you say. Yeah, because that community, it helps us so much to have it.
Mm-hmm. It does. And Tanisha, lastly but not least, please tell my audience where they can connect with you online.
Yes, so they can go to Instagram and Facebook under TJ Self Care. I also have a Facebook community, it's free. It's called Living Free too, where I go live at least 2 or 3 times a month, and we have some really good, intense conversations about topics like people pleasing and setting boundaries, etc. And I'm also on TikTok under TJ Self Care and YouTube as well.
Okay, and I'll make sure that I have all her information in the show notes. That way, if you want to follow up with her and get more information, you can. Again, thank you, Tanisha, so much for your transparency and spending time with us and educating us on people pleasing.
Yeah.
Um, I pray, ladies, this is another gem that you guys can use in the future. No one's perfect. So all this information, all the podcast episodes leading up to this, I want to make sure that we all know that healing is a process, no matter if it's people pleasing, anxiety, depression, burnout. There's many forms of healing that we have to go through. Thankfully, that God puts people in our place like Tanisha and other coaches and medical staff to help us get on our journey. So, again, thank you, Tanisha.
You're
And ladies,
welcome.
hope this is a great episode. I will see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye.